I walked into HR feeling like the porch light over my house flickering, exposed one breath from going out. Then Karen implied I'd endangered a 600-pound patient, her voice sharp enough to turn the whole room against me. But the twist hit fast when an official login map, time-stamped and unforgiving, showed an intern's unattended access, and suddenly the countdown case cracked open. Let me take you back. The conference room at Pine Brook Community Clinic felt colder than the hallway outside, as though the air conditioning had settled directly over the long oak table. Frost clung to the window beyond it, softening the outline of passing headlights on the street. Mara Ellison stepped in quietly, letting the door slide shut behind her. On the wall, a bright slide was already waiting: 600 Luslow's case discrepancy, final 45-day countdown, 12 days remaining. The number hit her like a slammed door. Someone shifted a binder. Someone else cleared their throat. Karen Holt. The supervisor stood off to the side with her tablet, hugged close to her chest. This could cost the clinic, she said, her gaze flicking toward Mara before she invited the rest of the audit team to sit. Mara took the nearest chair. Her scrub top tugged gently at her shoulder as she lowered herself and the small gold gratitude pin, a maple leaf, polished smooth from use, caught a slice of pale morning light. Thomas had given it to her a year ago. Thank you for your kindness, he'd said in a barely there voice that morning after Thanksgiving. Karen tapped forward. The medication entry for Mr. Green, she continued, shows a mismatched dose recorded under your credentials. A highlight bar appeared stark and unwavering. The HR clerk clicked his pen, waiting. Mara inhaled slowly. I double-checked that chart, she said, steady, but too quiet for the room. Outside the door, a cart rolled past, metal rattling against tile. She heard someone pause outside, as though listening in just long enough for their shadow to sweep across the frosted glass. The system doesn't show corrections, the clerk said. Only the original log. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Karen folded her arms, eyes narrowing in that careful managerial way that felt polite but cold. You had a bariatric patient weighing 600 pounds, she said. People that size, anything can happen if instructions aren't followed precisely. A few heads turned. One of the auditors scribbled something quickly onto his pad. Mara's fingers drifted toward the maple leaf pen, tracing the edge. She wasn't sure when her throat had tightened. Karen slid a single form across the table. We'll need your acknowledgement today, she said, just to keep our documentation in line before auditors arrive. When Mara stepped out of the room, the printer near the nurse's station beeped sharply. A fresh alert blinked across its tiny screen: risk escalation pending. She paused, the sound echoing faintly in the corridor. Her hand moved to her pen again, holding it as if the thin metal might steady her. The clinic's break room computer flickered as Mara typed in her credentials again. Her breath fogged faintly in the cool room, drifting across the screen. As the login wheel spun and stalled, then a red banner appeared: access restricted chart modified 3 times. The message froze her in place. Someone had changed the record again. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence. She reached for the mouse, trying a second time, then a third, each click softer than the last. Behind her, 2 medical assistants whispered about weekend plans, their voices dropping the moment she glanced over. The room felt too small suddenly, as if the walls had crept an inch closer overnight. By noon, she found herself at Riverfront Diner, because it was the only place in town where the windows let in light like a warm memory. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped in. Leaves outside slapped against the glass, swirling in the November wind. A waitress with kind eyes set a refill down in front of her. Rough day, hon, she asked, spoon clinking softly against the mug. Before Mara could answer, a hushed voice drifted from a booth behind her. I heard someone messed up real bad at the clinic. Audit folks aren't happy. The words carried just far enough to land between her shoulders like a small weighted stone. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and stared at the rising steam from her coffee. Rowan was at the counter paying for a to-go cup. He saw her, offered a nod of quiet understanding, then stepped aside as Becky rushed through the doorway. The intern froze when she spotted Mara. A napkin slipped from Becky's hand. She retrieved it quickly, then pivoted toward the farthest booth, head ducked. Mara watched her go. The tiny neon open sign buzzed above the entrance, flickering with a soft, uneven rhythm. That evening, the cold had deepened. Mara and her son Eli walked up the short path to their porch. The light over the door blinked to life, then dimmed, extinguishing itself without warning. Eli stopped. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She rested a hand on his shoulder, steadying him, though her own knees felt unsteady. "We'll figure it out," she said, though even the porch light seemed unsure. Inside her coat pocket, her phone buzzed. Message from HR meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Mandatory. The HR office was colder than the hall outside, as if the morning air had settled permanently between the filing cabinets and the long conference table. The moment Mara stepped in, the HR coordinator closed a manila folder and said without looking up, "We need closure on your case today." A fluorescent light flickered overhead. Rowan stood near the end of the table, one hand resting gently on the back of a chair. "I believe her work," he said quietly, eyes steady on the team. The sentence drifted into the room like a soft anchor, something small but firm. Karen, already seated, tapped her pen twice. "Let's review the logs." The red duty folder opened with a slow scrape. Rowan adjusted his glasses and pointed to the printouts. "These entries don't match Mara's shift," he said. "There's a duty confirmation at 9:14 that she couldn't have made. She was assigned to room 3 with a different patient at the time." Becky perched on the edge of her chair, fumbled her pen. It hit the floor with a sharp click that made everyone pause. Her cheeks flushed as she scrambled to pick it up. "Maybe," she whispered, barely audible. "Maybe I forgot to log out that day." Before the words could settle, Karen cut in. "Irrelevant. The system lists Mara's credentials, and that's what the auditors will see." Her tone stayed smooth, but the edge beneath it pressed the room tighter together. Mara's pulse thudded in her ears. She felt cornered. The walls narrowing around the long table, her hand slipped to the maple leaf pen on her scrub top, gripping it until the thin metal warmed under her touch. The HR coordinator pushed a single sheet forward. "We require your signature," he said. "Sign acknowledgement to close the file." Mara stared at the document. Outside the window, a gust rattled the blinds. Rowan leaned closer, softly enough that only she could hear. "You don't have to sign without reviewing everything." Karen exhaled sharply. "This isn't complicated," she insisted. "We need the acknowledgement today." The HR coordinator folded his hands. "Let's be clear. By Friday 5 p.m., if you don't sign, we proceed to suspension and freeze your benefits. That gives the auditors time to classify the event." The room went silent except for the tick of the wall clock. Mara reached for her phone the moment she stepped into the hallway, needing air. A new message from Rowan blinked on her screen. "There's something you need to see. Check the login map." The glow from Rowan's laptop lit the dimmed clinic office like a pale lantern. Rain tapped a delicate pattern against the window as he pointed to the screen. "Here," he said, voice low. The 10:42 a.m. login carried Becky's name, not Mara's. For a moment, the room seemed to steady as though the truth had finally taken shape. Mara leaned closer, her breath catching. The small gold pin at the edge of her scrub pocket slipped into view when she rose from her chair, its leaf glinting in the soft light. "This isn't nothing," Rowan added. "If Thomas confirms you were with him, this changes everything." Outside November, rain thickened to a silvery curtain. They hurried to the parking lot, the air cold enough to bite at their cheeks. Mara's phone buzzed as Rowan pulled the car out onto Maple Street. A trembling message appeared from Becky. I think it was me. I didn't log out. The confession shook her, shook the whole story, yet the words landed with a strange fragility, as if Becky had been carrying them for days. Maple Street glistened in the headlights, leaves plastered to the pavement. Houses along the road glowed with porch lamps in the late afternoon gloom. At the end of the block, Thomas Green's small home waited beneath a fluttering American flag, its colors muted by rain. Rowan jogged ahead and knocked. The door opened a crack before Thomas peered out, wrapped in a flannel robe. His eyes softened when they settled on Mara. He saw the pin first, the maple leaf he'd given her months earlier, and his shoulders eased. "You stayed with me that whole hour," he murmured. "You didn't leave." His voice was steady, if thin, like someone speaking a truth he had rehearsed quietly for days. Inside, the living room smelled faintly of cedar. Thomas lowered himself into a chair, took the pen Rowan offered, and signed the statement with deliberate care. Nurse Mara was present the entire time. Rowan photographed each page, the signature, the timestamp, the confirmation note, and sent them directly to HR. Minutes later, Mara's phone chimed. A new message flashed. The system error originated from an unattended intern login. The words blurred slightly as she read them again. The knot she had carried in her chest for days loosened not in a rush, but in a gentle release, as though her lungs finally remembered how to fill. Rain softened to a mist as they stepped back onto the porch. The flag near the eave swayed quietly, its fabric heavy and peaceful against the night. Her phone buzzed one more time. Karen's voice came through, clipped but urgent. "Mara, we need to talk first thing tomorrow." The email arrived just before sunset, its notification chiming softly against the quiet of the house. Mara stood by the kitchen counter when she opened it, the warm glow from the porch filtering through the blinds. Case cleared. No suspension. Benefits remain active. The words steadied her, simple, official, and almost unreal after the past week. A knock came at the door moments later. When she stepped out onto the porch, Rowan was already halfway down the path, coat collar turned up against the early evening chill. "Truth held up," he said, offering a small, knowing smile. "I told you?" The street lamp flickered on behind him, catching the swirl of falling leaves. Before she could answer, Becky approached from the sidewalk, hands tucked in her sleeves, steps hesitant. She stopped a few feet away. "I was careless," she said, voice raw but sincere. "I'm truly sorry." Her breath clouded in the cool air as she waited, shoulders tight. Mara nodded gently. "Thank you for saying that," she replied, letting the words settle without judgment. Karen followed shortly behind, posture composed but softer than usual. She lifted her chin slightly. "You deserved fairness," she said. There was no speech, no justification, just the single line, quiet enough to leave room for doubt and for grace. Karen touched the railing, then stepped back, giving Mara space. A school bus rumbled down the block. Moments later, Eli jogged up the walkway, backpack bouncing against his side. "Mom," he said, cheeks flushed from the cold. He reached into his jacket and unfolded a small sheet of paper. "We wrote what we're thankful for today." He handed it to her with both hands. In the unsteady handwriting of a 14-year-old were 6 simple words. "I'm thankful Mom didn't give up." Something in her chest loosened, collapsed by compassion as she reached for him, smoothing a curl of hair off his forehead. The porch light above them glowed steadily. Now no flicker, as if the house itself had exhaled. They went inside together. Mara set water to boil the kettle, singing its soft rising note, begging. When she stepped back onto the porch with a cup of tea, steam drifted upward in gentle spirals. She pinned the small gold maple leaf to her scrub top once more, letting her fingers rest on it. Across the neighborhood, a church bell chimed, faint, unhurried, carried by the November breeze. Mara glanced at the calendar pinned beside the door. Thanksgiving next week. She whispered into the quiet, "We're okay." The porch light glowed steadily against the November dusk, and the small gold pin rested calmly beside her cup as steam curled into the cool air. In that soft quiet, Mara felt her breath ease relief, settling into the spaces that had once held fear. Some truths don't shout, they simply stand upright when the storm passes, asking us to decide what kind of grace we're willing to give and how much weight does a heart carry when no one is watching. If this journey stirred something gentle in you, share it below. And if you'd like more quiet moments like this, feel free to subscribe and stay a while.